There's an ulterior motive with Andrew Berry when it comes to picking the team's next head coach, and it may ultimately cost the Browns from getting the best hire. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Can Andrew Berry really be trusted to choose the Browns' next head coach? Plus, Mike McDaniel has officially entered the chat, and as far as attractive jobs go, the Browns isn't the worst. It's also not the best. I do want to thank you for being on every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, and it's all thanks to you. Today's episode, of course, brought to you by FanDuel. The wildcard round is here. FanDuel's officially in playoff mode, so visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So, Andrew Berry, we know, is tasked with finding the Browns' next head coach. Jimmy Haslam made that very clear on Monday. Andrew's leading the search, and he is obviously in a situation where he's looking for the guy that's going to blaze this new path, this new future for the Cleveland Browns. But I think part of the problem with Andrew leading the search is, and on one hand, it's like he has to get the best guy because his job is on the line, or he should theoretically get the best guy because his job is on the line. But where there's a little bit of a conflict of interest here is that Andrew Berry is in a very precarious situation. He's going to be going into year 7 at the helm here. The previous head coach, who he was, by the way, aligned with in terms of contractually and just everything, and they've always been talked about as a package deal up until now. With all that in mind, there's a real world where he's going into next year and he's kind of the guy in the hot seat. And we've talked about before the idea that we see it all the time. Like if a GM outlasts a coach or a coach outlasts a GM, the other guy is usually first on the chopping block or getting fired that very next year if the team doesn't perform well. So understanding what's at stake for Andrew Berry, what we it may actually come back to bite the Browns in terms of him being the one leading the search, because he might not pick the best guy. He might just pick the guy that he thinks is best because he's most aligned with him. And I keep going back to that he'll work the best with, if that makes sense. And I keep going back to the quote from Berry the other day at the press conference he held after Kevin Stefanski was fired and sort of talked through obviously some things. And he dropped a line where he basically said, when I say partnership, a head coach GM relationship is a lot like a marriage. You have to work side by side and fight back to back. And I think that's really, really important because you have to be aligned in terms of how you're positioning the team. And so when I hear that from Andrew Berry, it doesn't mean I think he can't pick a good candidate necessarily. But what I'm weary of is if he's going into this with that perception, and I get what he's saying, he's right. Like, you are in a partnership here in this relationship between the head coach and the GM, where you're tasked with doing a lot of things together, even if you disagree, finding solutions, finding resolutions, working through things to put the best team on the field and try to be successful. So it's not that I like, yeah, maybe he still does end up getting the best candidate for the job. But when I hear that quote, and I think about the position Andrew Berry's in, where he might be on the hot seat himself going into this final year or this next year 7 here in Cleveland, understanding that his like the only other person that can be blamed for the team's struggles at this point is him if it doesn't go well, and the coach in year 1 probably isn't going to get blamed because it's going to be their first year in the building. And so understanding that, it could mean that there's almost like a roadblock for Andrew in terms of picking the best candidate, where he might end up just picking the candidate that aligns with him the most, or that he thinks he's going to have the best working relationship with. You know, it's why certain candidates are going to be, you know, like there's already names being mentioned with the Browns at this point for their search for a new head coach that are essentially like Andrew Berry. There's connective tissue there between Andrew Berry and said person. And the first person that comes to mind, and that is Aiden Dirty, the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Like, they have history, or I'm sorry, not Aiden Dirty. I'm thinking of pitcher from the Bengals, DC, or the Bengals OC, because Andrew Berry worked with Dan Pitcher when he was coming up into the league as like a scout. And I sort of talked about on Thursday about the idea that like Pitcher sort of brings that unique perspective of seeing both sides of this, the personnel side and the coaching side, which I think is interesting. But let's say in theory, like Pitcher ends up the guy. Maybe that ends up being the best hire. Maybe it's not. If maybe you miss out on a Harbaugh or somebody else because because Andrew Berry wants to find the best partner and not necessarily the best coach. Does that make sense? I think what I'm saying makes sense. And I think that what I just said maybe explains it the best. Like the idea that if Andrew Berry's going into this thing looking for the best partner to work alongside, that's going to, agree with him and be on the same page as him with most things, that might not mean you get the best coach. That might just mean he gets the best partner. So it's this fine line that he has to sort of walk here. And I do have some doubts about his ability to identify that guy. I think there's a lot of pressure on Andrew at this point for obvious reasons. Some I just laid out, the idea that this could be his final year if he doesn't get this thing righted and find a good coach or the right coach for this team. On top of the fact that, like a lot of what he's done at this point, yes, he had a really good year this last year, but now he's being asked to basically replicate it again. He's being asked to have another really good draft class and provide players that are going to be part of this team's core moving forward that, can be foundational pieces to build on. He's going to be asked to have another good free agency. Jimmy hasn't pointed to like the Malik Collins signing and some other guys. Like he's going to have to identify guys in certain areas that, we're in the margins where they can't necessarily overpay for guys at this point, given their contract or their salary cap situation, and particularly the Deshaun deal. Like he's going to have to find some of those small wins in certain places. And, like it's a tall task. He did it. He pulled it off last year, but history tells us he sometimes struggles to draft and he doesn't always bring in the best players. How many safeties has he missed on over the years? How many wide receivers has he missed on over the years, whether it's free agency or via the draft? So there's a lot to unpack there. And I just wonder, because the pressure's so much and he's going into this thing talking about it being a marriage, if the idea or the concept of finding the best working partner, the best person that's going to be sort of in lockstep with him in a team setting or in this NFL team setting is going to cloud him actually maybe being able to identify the best coach that's out there. It's a real possibility. We don't know like his thought process and all these things. They're obviously starting interviews. They held 2 of them on Thursday with their internal candidates and Tommy Reese and Jim Schwartz. And that's another part of this. Like if he feels like he has a good working relationship with those 2 guys and he wants to just keep them around and try to sort of build upon what they've already built, well, that might be the wrong move where you miss out on some other candidates that are out there that might be better for you if you go out and try to get one of those guys, because it might just be about what's the best partnership and the best working relationship rather than the best coach. That's the thing he has to avoid. And I do think that concept or that idea and those quotes from Monday should leave people at least somewhat skeptical of whether or not Andrew Berry can actually identify the best coach and lead this search to the appropriate place where it needs to find the coach that can turn this thing around. All that said, another candidate is on the table. Mike McDaniel has officially entered the chat. We talk about his prospects as the future Browns head coach coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. What is sports for traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by the people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood now, available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk, and is not appropriate for everyone. Events contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, so on Thursday, a new name has come to, I don't want to say the forefront, but has come into light, into the purview of the Cleveland Browns when it comes to their search for a new head coach. The Dolphins joined the ranks of the teams without head coaches right now as they fired Mike McDaniel, parted ways with Mike McDaniel, whatever you want to call it, and are beginning a head coaching search of their own. I want to say off rip here, I don't think the Dolphins do this if they don't think they have a legitimate shot at John Harbaugh. I feel like, and we know the connection that's there. Stephen Ross, Michigan alum, gives a lot of money to Michigan. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh used to coach at Michigan. And so he does obviously have a connection and a relationship with the Harbaughs because of that. And I would imagine that they have some sort of inkling that they feel like they must have a pretty good shot at landing John Harbaugh in Miami if he was going to make this move and fire Mike McDaniel. Because you could have fired him Monday. You could have fired him Tuesday. They waited until Thursday to make this move, which tells me like they were really contemplating bringing him back. But maybe their plans changed or things changed because John Harbaugh became available, and now all of a sudden everyone is in a mad dash or in a race to try to lure him to their team. So I think that probably changed things here. That makes Mike McDaniel now get fired, be out there available to be hired by somebody else. And this is a name that's already been linked to the Cleveland Browns prior to him even being fired. There was reports going into the last week of the season that if Mike McDaniel became available, the Browns would be interested. We know there's some history there. He served on Mike Pettine's staff as a wide receivers coach, underneath as well. Kyle Shanahan, who we know he comes from that tree. He followed him around. He was in Cleveland with him here as a wide receiver coach. Then he went with him to San Francisco. He was a run game coordinator. Then he took over as offensive coordinator later on in his tenure there. And then he was obviously hired for the Dolphins job. And, you know, the first 2 years in Miami were really good, were really impressive. He made Tua look the best he ever looked under Mike McDaniel his first couple years. Offensive EPA wise, like those units were the top 10, then top 5 in football in 2022 and 2023. And then they dropped off a little bit the last couple years. And so I do think Mike McDaniel is a brilliant offensive mind in this game right now. He's a rising star, or was a rising star, and still is considered and regarded, or is held in high regard. So much so that if he doesn't get a head coaching job, someone's going to hire him to be an OC, and it could be one of these teams. I'm not even kidding. Like I could see Buffalo trying to get him to coach alongside Josh Allen. I could see the Ravens trying to get him to coach along Lamar Jackson. Like he's going to have a lot of options. I can guarantee you that. Whether he ends up maybe not as a head coach, but at least as an OC. But I think the Browns have legitimate interest here making him their making him their head coach. And they're gonna pursue him. There's already been reports. I know Cleveland.com, Mary Kay Cabot had it, that he's been added to their list of candidates. No interview scheduled or anything to this point. That has not been reported yet, but they have at least made it known, like, hey, we're gonna pursue this guy. We're gonna look into this guy, and we're gonna see if he is a legitimate option for us. So we'll see what that looks like. But yes, like I think it's a move that potentially makes a lot of sense for the Browns if they're looking for that offensive-minded coach. Now, opinions on Mike McDaniel, I think, are going to vary. And that's what I think we have to sort of decipher here next, because I think Mike McDaniel is a really good offensive coach. He comes from the Shanahan tree. Everyone's always looking to get that next guy from the Shanahan tree or the McVay tree and like cash in. It's the way of doing business when it comes to hiring coaches these days. You always want that hot new coordinator, that guy from the flavor of the month when it comes to the best coaches right now. It's just how it goes. So it makes sense why he, got the gig when he got the gig. Makes sense that he still is still held in high regard right now. I think there's some pros and there's some cons with Mike McDaniel. And the first thing I want to point to is, they were 1-6, fired their GM. They lost to the Browns early in the season, and he kept that thing together. He found a way to keep it on the tracks. They won 5 of their next 6 after that, went on a little bit of a streak, and it turned into, a 7-9 season for the Dolphins, which was respectable at the very least. After you started 1-6, that's not bad. So I think that speaks to him as a coach and his ability not to lose that locker room. I also think if people were not sure Kevin Stefanski was holding guys accountable in the locker room, I think you saw Mike McDaniel do that this year. I mean, he benched Tua because he didn't think he was playing well enough. Like this was a guy who was willing and able to do whatever was necessary for the team and wasn't afraid to bench guys and call guys out if they weren't playing well. Like it was obvious the way he was kind of going about his business down there to try to send a message. And so I don't think that's an issue for him either. And I know that was an issue that people had with Kevin Stefanski. They didn't think he did that enough, at least outside looking in. We don't know internally. It's not like guys internally said he did, but we don't know those things. So I don't think that's a concern. And I certainly think like his offense is he has the capabilities of making the offense successful. A couple things that I'm weary of though. When he got to Miami, like that offense was set up for him to have the ultimate success. They had traded for Tyreek Hill. They built this juggernaut of an offense. Like it was plug and play essentially. It was like put the coach here who's got the great offensive scheme and let's do this thing. This year, like here in Cleveland, he's going to be tasked with building that whole entire thing out. We don't know if he has a quarterback right now. He does have a running back of the future. He's got maybe a tight end of the future in Harold Fenton Jr. I wouldn't say maybe. I think he does have a tight end of the future in Harold Fenton Jr. But like he needs his offensive line to get built. He needs receivers to kind of accompany this group of guys. So there's still a lot to figure out there, and it's kind of this question like, do you trust him to do that? I do think I trust Mike McDaniel to build out an excellent run game. His run games have always been top tier and some of the best in football, and his scheme has been very advantageous. I mean, Raheem Mostert had like a record season scoring touchdowns in this system and in this offense. So I do trust that. And I do think there's some questions about like leadership wise. He is one of those more of like the player coach type guy. And does that work? Will that work? It's kind of a matter of like philosophy and how you feel and guys' temperament in the locker room. So that's something you got to sort of know going in is like how he's going to handle those types of things. Do I think that Mike McDaniel is my top option? No. If it's up to me, again, as I said on Thursday, I want John Harbaugh for this team. But if I'm thinking through the potential coaches that are available in this cycle right now, I think he's in the top 4 for me, is the way I would put it. And it's Harbaugh 1. I still really like Clint Kubiak as an option. I still really like Robert Saleh as an option. And then probably Mike McDaniel's in that mix with those guys. I think that's probably the way I view it. So I think listen, they should absolutely explore it. They should absolutely look into it. I'm intrigued at the very least by Mike McDaniel. Do I think it's an easy fix? Like the results weren't there these last couple of years, no doubt. And do you have enough? Is there enough evidence there that he's a great coach? No. But in the vein of trying to find an offensive-minded coach, he's going to be one of the best ones out there. He's going to be highly coveted. Like I said, if he doesn't get a head coaching job, he'll be an OC somewhere. And we'll just have to see what that looks like. But, I'm at least intrigued by the notion of Mike McDaniel. I wouldn't say he's my top choice, but he's near the top of the list. He's in the top 4 at the very least. And I'd be curious to see how serious the Browns are about maybe hiring him, and we'll see how that process kind of plays out in the weeks ahead. Now that the Dolphins have jumped into this pool of teams that are now looking for head coaches, there are 8 openings. I want to rank them with you. Where do the Browns fall? Are they a good job? Are they a bad job? We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get profit boost packs waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. You can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts. Whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching, you can still bet. Whatever type of bettor you are, all the options are still available to you. If you want to build out a parlay, if you want to just bet money lines, it's all in the FanDuel app. Every play feels bigger, and the boost makes your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply the profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day today. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forget about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all the money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your actual savings. I love how it tracks all my subscriptions, lets me cancel them right in the app. No more hunting down customer service numbers. There were some things I forgot about that Rocket Money showed me, and I was able to save some money per month, each month that way. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you get a clear view of your financial picture. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, so there are 8 jobs now officially open in the NFL, with the Dolphins sort of joining this fold here on Thursday. And I want to go through and rank these jobs. This is just my perception. You can have a different ranking. You can feel differently about these jobs and all these different things. This is my perception of how these jobs should be ranked, can be ranked, whatever. So, and I want to be clear here too. People love to do this. I mean, I'm doing a damn whole segment on it. Like, right? Like I people love to rank these jobs. At the end of the day, one of the things I hate the most about like a head coach hiring cycle or teams that are looking at head coaches is the hyperbolic takes on, well, nobody's going to want that job. Nobody's going to go for that job. Nobody's going to want to go to that destination. Guys, there are 32 of these things. And reaching the title of NFL coach is the epitome, it's the peak of that profession. You know, it's why there's stories or temptations every year from college coaches to, you know, jump ship to the NFL, because reaching that plateau means you accomplished, like you reach the highest levels of the sport that you could possibly reach. You are an NFL coach. That's what these guys dream of doing. So the notion that just because the job might not be attractive means like, they're not going to get the best candidates or they're not going to get certain guys. I always push back on that, because there's only 32. Like, they're going to hire somebody. A lot of these guys aren't in a position to like turn down generational wealth and say, no, I'm good. I mean, now some can wait because they know they're going to be like a candidate the next year. But for a lot of these guys, it's like you take the opportunity when it's there, because there's only 32 of them. And so this is my ranking of the positions that are open. And I think it starts honestly with the Ravens. Listen, Ravens are an established organization. They have their franchise quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who I think they still feel good about. They clearly chose him over John Harbaugh. So they're going to prioritize him moving forward. And I think any coach that comes in there, especially an offensive-minded coach, is going to feel pretty good about the prospects of coaching Lamar Jackson. So you have a 2-time MVP on your roster. What's not to like? So and you have some other foundational pieces too, you know, like Kyle Hamilton's a really good player. Like, so I think they feel pretty good about where they're at. And that's like listen, John Harbaugh was a good coach. He set you up for success there. It didn't go well this year and he lost his job, but you know, I think it's a ready-made situation to win. So I think it has to be number 1. I have the Falcons as number 2. Might seem weird to some people. They have a ton of talent though. Like, on both sides of the ball, they seem ready to compete. People had the Falcons as like a dark horse candidate to maybe win that division or make the playoffs or whatever in the NFC. So I think there's some talent there. If you like Michael Penix, you have a quarterback of the future potentially there. But even if you don't like Michael Penix, maybe Kirk Cousins can be sort of your bridge or whatever. And yes, they still have to find the quarterback potentially then. But I think they have a lot of talent on that roster and they feel good about where they are. I mean, Bijan Robinson is incredible. So I think that's a really good situation that feels like they're really close to getting over that hump and competing again, especially if they, you know, get the right coach for Michael Penix or think they need a different quarterback and find that quarterback. That's easier said than done. So I have the Falcons number 2. I have the Giants number 3. This is another situation where it's like, if you like the quarterback, if you like Jackson Dart, you probably feel pretty good about the future there. And I don't know that a coach is going there unless they do feel good about Jackson Dart, because it seems like the team wants to sort of invest and lean on him and build around him as their future. So that's an interesting one. But they have some young pieces. They have a really good defensive line. Like there's some talent there, and New York is trying desperately to get back into to prominence or get back to prominence. So I think it's fair to say that the Giants are up there in terms of jobs. This next one might be controversial for people. I'm putting the Raiders 4, and the biggest reason is like that team is bad, but they have the number 1 overall pick. It's basically a blank canvas, and that's always attractive to coaches when you have a blank canvas that you can just kind of come in, take the reins, build whatever you want to build. Maybe they're going to have the rights to whichever quarterback they want. If they want to take one number 1 overall, that might be Fernando Mendoza. So if you believe in Fernando Mendoza, go get your guy. And you do have a few cornerstone players. Max Crosby's there, assuming they're able to sort of mend fences. You got Ashton Genty there now from this last draft. Like you starting to maybe build some things out there, so you feel good about that. So yeah, I think the Raiders' job is up there mostly because of where they're picking. I have the Browns next. I have the Browns 5th in the 8, and I think that's probably a fair place to be. Listen, it's a plug and play defense. That group's really, really good. You have a generational player, Myles Garrett. What's not to like? The questions become like, what are you doing for quarterback? And you have an offense that needs to really be overhauled and built up and fixed. Who's up for that challenge? That's the question that I think the Browns are trying to ask themselves and figure out as they sort through their coaching candidates. So there's a lot of flaws here, but you do have 2 first-round picks this year. Even though it's not the first overall pick and you don't necessarily have the rights to the best quarterback, that's still attractive. And I feel like the hope is they're getting sort of out from underneath the Deshaun Watson contract within the next year as well. That's big because that frees you up to maybe do some things. And the Browns always find ways to like create enough cap space to do the things that they want to do. So that does matter. I have the Titans next. I also forgot to mention, like, the Raiders have a ton of cap space. And like, listen, there's probably going to be pushback on the idea that the Titans is a better job than the Browns, largely because of cap space and because they have Cam Ward. And I see where you're coming with that. I just think they have a lot to still address. Like, their defense isn't very good. Jeffrey Simmons is incredible. They have a player on defense, but their defense largely stinks. Their offense was still a mess this year. They don't have a lot of talent around Cam Ward right now, so there's just a lot to do and a lot to build. Now, again, you got all that cap space. Maybe that makes it a slightly better situation than the Browns. And maybe I missed the plot on this and should put the Titans ahead of the Browns. But it's also been an organization like the Browns that's been largely unstable, since the days of Steve McNair and whatnot. So we'll see what comes of that, but I think the Browns are slightly ahead of the Titans. If you want to flip those, though, I get it. The last 2 I have are the Dolphins and the Cardinals. I just don't know. Maybe I'm naive to the Cardinals situation. But like the Cardinals quarterback situation's a mess. Kyler Murray's probably not going to be there next year. What are they doing about that? They're not really in position to draft one based on where they're drafting in the 2026 draft order. So I don't know like how they're going to solve that problem immediately or quickly. They are drafting 3rd, so maybe if one of those quarterbacks falls, they could get one. But right now, it doesn't look like they're going to be in position to draft one. So I don't know. But they also, I feel like, just their defense isn't otherworldly. Like they have some talent there, but they just kind of seem like they're lost right now. And I had the Dolphins 1 spot ahead of them at 7 because I think Miami's always an attractive place because of the weather. But cap wise, like they don't have a lot of cap space right now. They got a lot of bloated contracts for guys that are sort of getting phased out. Tyreek Hill may never play again for all we know. Who knows? And they're still locked into Tua right now because his dead cap's like $90 million next year. So I don't think that's a very good situation either. But that's my ranking. I think the Browns are probably in the 5 to 6 range. And so they're not the worst job. They're certainly not the best job that's available. And again, I want to be clear. I don't think it matters either way. There's only 32 of these things. They're going to find somebody who wants the job. But that would be my ranking of the positions that are available, the 8 jobs that are available right now for the Browns. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level. Go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Browns with no interruptions. members-only Discord access, and more. It's all just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonbrowns.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. You can also keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again soon, Cleveland. See ya.